55 years old and died from a heart attack. Diabetes and, yeah.
Where did he grow up?
It's a good area to grow up. This is not a very good area to live in as an adult.
Right. If he grew up, not a good area to raise a family.
Find that a good
Just
story.
get your car taken care of.
Kind of talk your way out of
What are we talking about? Oh, yeah, I did it myself.
it. Big shot.
What a,
Only you and I, Mark and Jen know that.
that stuff in the tank, like you said, and added about 12 gallons of gas. And
Remember how to use this thing. At least you have the thing up here.
Well,
I know.
it's preventive. I mean, it's something that you do because, you know, if you don't,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which is worse, you know,
don't have a
growing
problem.
up in that environment or growing up in an environment where you
So you
still
had,
was poor.
you had to like run.
I did that on
This is
my mom's
probably at least once a quarter.
Lincoln town car. It's an old, big old huge.
I had to run close.
I haven't had one of those in a long
So
time.
you had a route that you had
A nice one?
to not be seen.
There was, songs at Central Catholic, which is in the inner city.
Yeah.
All right, it's time to call the Farragut Beer Board for April 13th, 2017 to order. First item of business is approval of the minutes from the March 9th, 2017 meeting. Has anybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Motion
move-
approved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item is beer permit request. We have an approval of a Class 6 special occasion beer permit for the Remote Area Medical Cinco Festival.
Yes, sir. This is going to be their second year for this festival, and it's going to be at the Gander Mountain area like it was last year. It's going to be on April the 28th, and the motion is to approve the special occasion beer permit for the Remote Area Medical Cinco Festival, April 28th, 2017.
Do we have a representative here?
Yes, sir.
Could you approach the podium, please? State your name and your address, home address.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Eastman. I'm the CEO from Remote Area Medical. I live down in Athens, Tennessee. We're headquartered over in Rockford, and we're fortunate enough to have the third annual Cinco Fest here in Farragut. Last year we had a great turnout. We raised about $18,000, which went directly to patient care, which made a big difference. If you followed the press at all, we treated over 1,200 people in Knoxville this year with about 700 volunteers, and it's all because of events like this. This is the one event we have. The rest of it is just individual donors, but this makes a big difference as far as supplies and funding to those patients. I've got John Volpe. He's our chairman and head of the festival.
Hi, my name's John Volpe. I work for Abuelos. I live at 727 Dunview Lane in Concord. And this is our third festival. We're hoping to have anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 people show up this year. So our goal is to raise about 60,000 this year.
Wow.
Ambitious.
Yeah, I'd say.
Hours that you guys are going to have your event?
Early admission is 5 o'clock, and then the regular general admission is 6 to 9.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
All the paperwork's in order?
Yes, sir.
Well, all right then.
Any issues from last year?
None at all.
Okay.
If no other questions, do I hear a motion?
Move to approve special occasion beer permit for the Remote Area Medical Cinco Festival, April 28th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations and good luck to you this year.
Ray, thank you so much for your support.
Okay, now we turn to the board meeting. Alderman and Mayor, we'll start by rising, and Alderman Markley will introduce the Scouts, not Cub Scouts,
Boy Scouts.
and the invocation.
We have opening prayer tonight by Brother Clint Morey from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then we'll have the pledge to the flag led by Troop 14 of the Boy Scouts of America.
Our dearest Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this beautiful day that we've had. We're grateful to be in attendance in this board meeting. We pray that you may be with the mayor and the aldermen of this board, that you may inspire them to understand the will of this town and to make choices that will benefit its citizens and surrounding communities. We're grateful for this great nation that we live in. We're grateful for the freedoms that we have. We're grateful for the democracy that we uphold. We humbly pray for these things, and we do this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Boys, would you like to come down and lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Change the agenda.
Mayor, we do have one item that we need to ask that you delete tonight, and that's item number 6A. And that's the only changes that we'd ask for tonight.
That's an appointment, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Business items.
I move to approve with the amendment.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item is the mayor's report. I don't think I have anything very specifically to report. Does anybody else have something you want to get off your chest or whatever? Anybody?
We do have the Farragut Food and Wine Festival coming up soon, May 5th, and tickets are live and on sale. If you go to the Farragut Business Alliance website, you can get the information there.
Next item, is it, anybody else have anything to say?
I have nothing.
Next item then is the Citizens Forum. Do we have anybody?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we move to the approval of the minutes from March 23rd, 2017.
If there are no changes, I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That takes us to business items, and we've just scratched out the first one, so we'll go to approval of a contract for removal and abatement of materials at 11409 Kingston Pike.
Thanks, Mayor. That would be the Campbell Station Inn. And as you know, the town recently approved Phase 2 of our contract with Brewer Ingram Fuller to initiate specific renovations of the Campbell Station Inn and demolition of the dog daycare building. In accordance with the many laws governing this activity, the town must survey for and abate any hazardous materials found within those structures. Asbestos-containing material and lead-based paint were found in both buildings. Thus, the town must properly deal with these materials before commencing any additional work. The town solicited proposals from qualified firms and determined Luke Green to be the lowest qualified respondent for this project in the amount of $39,500. Approval of this agreement will initiate a project to abate the asbestos and lead-based paint found during the hazmat survey of the Campbell Station Inn and dog daycare. Myself, I recommend that approval of this agreement, and the town attorney reviewed the form and has recommended approval of that. And I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
So this is both the former barn and the house?
Yes, sir. It's for the Campbell Station Inn and for the dog daycare building.
Okay. Do they?
What's going to happen is they're going to remove all the asbestos from both buildings, and they're going to either remove or encapsulate the lead-based paint in the Campbell Station Inn. We're going to demolish altogether the other building, so that's immaterial. But they're going to remove everything, all the asbestos from both buildings.
That sounds like a big job to me.
Will be.
Yeah,
Very,
Luke
very
Green.
invasive.
Luke Green's been around forever, a very reputable firm, know what they're doing.
Good references.
Will they be working with Brewer? Will Brewer, Ingram, and Fuller be working with them to?
No, ma'am, this is completely separate.
Okay. I don't know. You know, it's not very stable in there. They're aware of, obviously, they're aware of the precariousness of the situation.
They are. They've toured the building.
Okay.
So I think once we approve this, we can get this done within a week after they get the go-ahead.
You know, we did it wrong again. We didn't make the motion first.
You're right.
I'm going to move to approve the professional services agreement between the town and E. Luke Green for the removal and abatement of materials of the Campbell Station Inn and Dairy Barn building for a lump sum cost of $39,500.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving down to
We'll get this right.
C, approval of bids for contract 2017 -05 resurfacing contract.
Yes, this
Wait,
is our,
wait.
I'm sorry.
No, we're trying to take on the, officially take on the, what is it, Robert's rules. So first.
Well, just as a clarification.
He talks first,
he
and then we
does-
make a motion?
Well, the staff will make a presentation, and then
Okay.
right after that, then the board can jump in and make a
I
motion.
appreciate your guidance, Dave,
Absolutely.
because I don't know what I'm doing.
You do a fine job.
Really threw me off now.
I'm sorry. You're right, I'm wrong. I can learn, I can live with that.
This is contract, excuse me, contract 2017-05, street resurfacing. Every year, the engineering staff maintains a kind of a running list of streets within the town. We take actually several weeks going around at different times to take a look at the streets, and we try to pare down a list of streets that are major priorities based on the condition of the road, looking at the volumes of traffic that are on the roads. This year's list, I'll try to read them quickly here. Pleasant Forest Drive, Harrow Road, Old Colony Parkway, Woodchase Drive, Thornton Drive, Boring Road, Harbor Way, Lake Breeze Drive, Hatteras Drive, and Nautical Drive. We accepted bids on March 30th for resurfacing of those streets. We got 3 bids. Greenback Asphalt Company bid $518,888.50. APAC Atlantic bid $454,574.70. And Duracap Asphalt Company bid $456,481.50. We have tabulated all of the bid items that was included in your packet, and staff recommends award of the contract to APAC Atlantic Incorporated for their low bid of $454,574.70.
Does this conclude the staff's presentation?
This concludes staff's presentation, I hope.
Then I make a motion that we approve a bid and award contract 2017-05 to APAC Atlantic for their low bid of $454,574.70.
I second.
Do we have any discussion on this?
I do have a question. Have we used this firm before?
Yes, we've used APAC quite often. They've probably been the most often among the resurfacing contractors around.
And we've been satisfied with the results.
We've always been satisfied with it.
Good company.
Question, Boring Road, Kingston Pike to Boring Lane, is that basically the driveway? Or the nice finished part?
I think that is up to the nice finished part.
Okay.
The part that was rebuilt back 10 years ago, 8 years ago.
Okay. And Thornton Drive, that's where we just looked at possibly putting in traffic calming?
That's correct. We're going to resurface first.
Okay. Was that one of the things was that a decision made before they came in and wanted to, or was kind of?
Totally separate.
Okay.
And in fact, we're still, we still are accepting ballots right now. We may not be doing anything as far as traffic calming in there.
Okay.
It's up to the neighborhood right now.
Okay. Thornton Drive, I know that they were complaining that it's pretty narrow. I assume we're not trying to lay out more asphalt, widen it a little
That's
bit, or we're
correct.
just repaving what we have.
Just
That's
resurface. Generally, you'll get a little bit of asphalt that kind of overhangs. You kind of get a shoulder effect on the
Okay.
on the roadway, but it's only a few inches on each side.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. When will this project begin once the contract has been approved?
We normally leave a pretty wide window for scheduling. Most of these contractors, like APAC, They will have several very large projects in any given paving season, and they will work our project into their schedule.
Guess my question is, will this take place during the summer, after school lets out, or how does that going to affect school traffic? And how are the citizens are affected by these roads contacted? How are they made aware of what's going on?
Oh, we will make everyone aware.
Okay.
And in fact, but no, as far as the scheduling goes, we get better unit prices if they are able to have a freer schedule.
Okay.
It's one of those things, once they move in, they'll go ahead and get their work done. But I don't want to tell them that you have to do it in the month of June.
That drives up the
because
cost. Yeah.
their response would be, sure, we'll do it in June, but it's going to cost you.
I wasn't sure in years past how we had done it. I wasn't sure if we had it set
We
when
do
school was out
alert,
or
we
not.
do alert everyone. We pass out notices.
Good.
Partly to inform everybody of what's happening and partly to make sure they don't park on the street.
All right. Okay.
They work pretty fast when they're in and out, and
Now it's all about production in that business.
they got it down.
So what's the total length of miles or whatever for this?
I'm not sure I have that I don't have that in my write-up. It's about 3.5 miles, I think.
Is that what we try to usually, I'm sorry, Mayor.
I was just curious.
Is that what we usually try to shoot for, about 3.5 miles?
I'd like to be able to do about 5 or 6, but for the last few years, we've been budgeting about $500,000 per year.
Okay.
Next year, we may be a little higher. We're considering Parkside Drive as
Okay.
going to be a fairly expensive piece of road.
What are we seeding with mulch?
Seeding with mulch, Pleasant Forest Drive, there's about 730 feet that is failing. We're not sure why, but we're going to be replacing some curb work in there. When you replace the curb, it'll be up a little bit higher. We'll have to backfill it with dirt and then seed and mulch.
Okay. And what about the vehicle detection loop? What road is that on?
That's wherever we have signals. I'm not sure where those are. I'd have to go back through the list, but the detection loops,
Old Colony.
Colony.
Okay, got it.
Those are the vehicle detection for traffic signals.
I know this is coming up later, but when we do the CMAC, will those come out or those still stay in there when we do our signal?
Well, on the next, it's actually the very next thing on
Okay,
the
I'll ask
agenda.
Ben.
We're going to be replacing all of our vehicle detection with radar.
Okay.
It's a much more reliable system. It's very expensive, but it's much more reliable.
So as we go through paving projects in the future, these vehicle detection loops will be removed and then
That's
we
correct.
don't have to worry about replacing. Okay.
Or just paved over?
Pardon me?
Will they just be paved over?
Well, these,
No, I mean, whenever we get to the radar system.
eventually they'll be paved over,
Okay.
yes. Milled up, paved over, however
Okay.
it's.
That's all I had.
I have no further questions.
I have no further.
Well, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Next item is approval of agreement with TDOT for development of CMAC traffic signal improvement project.
Yes, this is the fun part of the evening. You'll recall back in December, we announced that the town had been awarded a CMAC grant for development of a centrally controlled traffic management system in the town. This is a request that we put in earlier last year, and as I said, we were informed back in December that we had been awarded this grant. We will have this centrally managed system, more or less setting up a control base station Zebra at Town Hall, where we will be able to monitor a little bit. No, we're not going to be in there playing with the timing on these things, but because it's a very delicate balancing act, but we will be able to make adjustments as needed. This will include all of the town's 26 signals. It'll also include central traffic signal control software, replacement of all of our controllers, signal system communication, handicap ramps and pedestrian signals, radar intersection detection devices, the updated left turn signal heads like we have at Kingston Pike at Virtue Road, which I don't know if anybody's really paid attention to that, but I go that way all the time. It's a much more intuitive thing than what most signals have right now. And we're going to try to include mast arms and poles where we don't have them. So, yes, it's a very expensive project. This has a total cost of $2,925,000. It is 100% CMAQ funded with no local match. So we're pretty pleased with it. Staff recommends approval of the TDOT contract for development of this project.
I move for approval of TDOT Agreement 170024 for development of CMAQ Signal Improvement Project.
Second.
Okay, I have some questions. Looking through that first page of the accomplishment of project, the responsible party is agency, which is us, correct?
That's correct.
So we are going to be responsible for environmental clearance, then the preliminary and engineering, then right-of-way, then utility coordination, then construction.
That's correct.
Each of those are separate phases. We have to complete one and then get approval before we move into the next one.
That's correct.
Do we, I know this is the hard part, do we have a time frame for each of these? Do we,
Slow.
okay, slower and slowest?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
It takes a little while to get all approvals, to get, we received NEPA approval for the previous CMAQ project back in November or December. We've been waiting on that since last spring.
Oh, geez, okay.
So it is a slow process, but if you're spending other people's money, you go by their schedule.
So with the environmental clearance, the approval of this, this agreement, does that start the environmental clearance, or we have to wait for them to tell us, okay, you can start this?
With approval of this agreement, we will send this back to TDOT. They will execute it and then give us, notice to proceed with the NEPA phase.
Okay,
At that point, we will select a consultant, work up a proposal with a consultant, present that to the board for approval,
okay,
and then it goes back to TDOT, and at that point, they can begin the NEPA phase. At each point of the way, they will notify us, give us a notice to proceed.
okay. So which notices to proceed will require us bringing it back to the board? Do each of these steps, are we going to have to acquire right-of-way?
If we do, it will be very little
Okay.
right-of-way. This is signals are already on the right-of-way, so probably very little, if any.
Okay. And utility coordination says we will be responsible for the payment of any utility coordination, is that?
Not necessarily. Payment for,
Well, it sounds like we
we
are,
will coordinate with utilities.
we're funding provided by agency or project. It sounds
Right.
like if there's any funding that needs to be done with utility
Yeah,
coordination.
we will coordinate with them. I read that to mean our consultant will work out their plans
Okay.
with utility companies, and if there are any conflicts, we can adjust as need be.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. On page 2, under completion date, says the agency shall provide the department with the documents, certifications, and clearance necessary to obtain the department's notice to proceed to the construction phase. 2 years, that should be plenty of time, right? You don't anticipate any issues meeting that 2-year deadline, getting everything else complete before construction.
We should be able to do that. And I've also talked with a couple of consultants and asked them about project development, time-wise, and if that was going to be an issue. They felt like it was perfectly doable.
Good. And then on page 7, under payment methodology, it says apparently each step along the way, we have to make payment and then we get reimbursed? Is that how this works?
That's correct. We can bill monthly, no more than monthly, and at least quarterly is their preference.
Okay. So apparently staff is okay with that, no issues. Okay. All right. That's all I have.
I had one other question. 26 signals. That's not 26 intersections with signals, is each?
Yes,
It is. We have 26 intersections with signals? Wow.
It's kind of like the number of doors in your house.
I
There's a
know,
lot more than you
sure.
think.
You start counting it. Holy cow.
When you start painting them, that's when you figure that out.
Have any of them?
The hinges.
Do we currently have, how many that are radar now?
Only one. That's the Kingston Pocket Virtue signal, and it isn't working right now. I'm sorry, that's,
What's the one at Campbell Station in Grigsby?
that is video detection.
That
We've
doesn't
had
work-
some issues with
that
video
doesn't
as well.
always work well either.
Really, anything that faces, if the camera has got to face due east or due west, at certain times of the year, the sunrise and sunset makes life miserable.
Not the fog?
Fog as well.
Fog as well, okay. So we're not going to have any, will that one be
That's why
replaced?
we're going to radar, and that will be replaced.
Okay, great.
So we've got 2 years to get our part done, and they've got 4 years to get the thing wrapped up, according to B2, paragraph 3 on page 2. So I'm thrilled. Yeah, I guess I should make that a
Pretty
motion.
pleased
Do
myself.
we have any further discussion? I have none.
None?
And we have a motion on the table?
We already have one.
Yes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move on to ordinances. We've got a bunch of them.
Let's see.
The first one is a second reading, ordinance 17-02, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code Title 14, Land Use Controls, Chapter 6, Farragut Architectural Design Standards, Standard 2.17, to provide for new requirements associated with building materials.
Okay, unfortunately, for the next several items, y'all are going to have to bear with me and pay and deal with me, I guess. So we'll try to get through these as quick as we can. But this particular item we talked about actually at 3 planning commission meetings, 2 workshop sessions before they voted on it. And this is just an amendment to the architectural design standards after we've been dealing with some projects that have come to us since we originally adopted the standards in April of 2015 to try to address some of the issues that we've had with certain buildings and materials that were being used as primary materials and accent materials. So what the Planning Commission recommended in Ordinance 1702 was to increase the percentage of masonry, basically brick and stone, on new buildings from 60 to 75%. That was unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission and was also approved on first reading on March 23rd. And there have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading, and the staff recommends approval on second reading.
I'll make a motion to, sorry.
I move to approve ordinance 1702 on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
No changes from,
No, ma'am. No.
I have no questions.
I have none.
none either.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The next one is ordinance 17-03, ordinance to amend text of the Farragut zoning ordinance by amending Chapter 3, specific district regulations, section, what is that, 24, 25?
26.
26, planned commercial development district, PCD, to provide for new requirements.
This item was discussed at 2 planning commission meetings, and the applicant that initiated this request is interested in building a mixed-use plan development in the South Watt Road, Kingston Pike area. And since this was kind of a large proposed development, master planned, the planned commercial development district, the PCD, was seen as the most applicable to this particular project. And we really haven't used the PCD in a number of years. It was actually created back in 2006 as part of the Kroger Marketplace development. And it was intended to be something to give an applicant more design flexibility in exchange for providing some unique elements back to the community. In fact, the only property currently that's zoned PCD is the Kroger Marketplace area in Brooklawn Street. When the PCD was originally adopted, only commercial and office were seen as the uses that they wanted in that particular district. Did not include a residential component. But this particular applicant is wanting to have some mixed use in their project and also some multifamily. So they requested that the PCD be revisited to allow residential as one of the permitted uses. When that was presented to the Planning Commission initially in February, they felt very favorable to that. It gives a developer more flexibility in what they can do with projects. You can end up having land uses within the same development that can complement each other and help sustain each other. People living near where they're purchasing things or have their offices, for example. So it was viewed favorably. As part of the update to the PCD, since we were going ahead and updating it anyway, the staff incorporated some of the recent updates that we've made to general commercial and regional commercial and office that dealt with trying to implement certain aspects of our architectural design standards, because these really all fit in well with a planned development anyway. That should be components that are in good planned developments. So some of the key features that are in Ordinance 1703 include, of course, residential being as a permitted use, providing some additional language to encourage functional open space that's integrated throughout the development, encouraging low-impact development practices in some of the stormwater design, connectivity, again, looking for pedestrian and vehicular connectivity, relaxing front yard setbacks so that you can bring buildings up closer to the street and engage the public realm with more flexibility. Try to orient automobile-oriented uses toward the interior of the development. Again, trying to present the development with liner buildings that face the public streets, and have the auto-oriented, if there are any uses, more interior to the project. Screening of parking lots, we amended that language in the C1. Providing for our transition language that we have in the community service district, which is kind of a different approach from the buffer strip tradition that we've had in the town. It actually offers residents better protection than a buffer strip, but it encourages a project to be integrated with what's around it rather than just planting a dense forest and putting up fences to isolate different developments. So, and then we also added the height provisions from the R6 amendments that we made back in 2014, dealing with multifamily structures. So when this was presented to the Planning Commission for a vote in March, they unanimously recommended approval of this ordinance. There was an item that came up at the April 4th staff developer meeting where we're talking with the applicant now about proceeding to the next step, assuming this text gets changed to actually rezone the property to the planned commercial district. And that discussion involved whether we needed to revisit the height provisions. Again, those were brought over from the R6, and what we're trying to do with height is to transition height from internal to the development to kind of taper it to what's around it, so that if you have a structure within 100 feet of a property line and that adjacent property is zoned residential, that structure needs to be no higher than what the maximum height permitted in that adjacent zoning district. So what we're trying to do is have buildings that are of form and scale, height, length, width, that start to look like what they're transitioning to around them, so that you don't have really large buildings and then all of a sudden you have a single family home relatively close to that. So that's what that language was talking about. This particular property has some topographic opportunities that I think the applicant had requested as part of that discussion to maybe look at adding some flexibility in the height provisions that would account for topography and other site-specific unique characteristics, and that's something we might want to discuss. I think the applicant's here. They can also bring that up. And I think that was mainly the only items that we talked about at the staff developers. Also a question about with this type of project, because it is so large scale and can be relatively complicated, is trying to maybe perhaps considering requiring a team of professionals, kind of like we do with open space residential development design, to be involved throughout the project, so that you get a land planner engaged on the front end with an engineer and an architect to try to have a better overall project, because everybody sees the development in a different way that can each complement the other. So that's not currently required in the language of the ordinance, but it's something that we also talked about at the staff developer meeting. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions about the ordinance itself, or
Motion first.
the applicant is here if you have some specific questions about their project.
Okay. I'm going to move to approve ordinance 17-03 on first reading.
Second.
Yes,
Mark, on the amendments number 3, providing for the use of low-impact development practices in the design, can you clarify that a little bit? What are we talking about there? Like permeable pavers, water gardens?
permeable pavers, rain gardens, bioswales. It can be planting more trees. I mean, it could be any number of things that really is kind of where stormwater is moving to. We're just trying to stay a little ahead of the curve there. We already have that similar wording in our general commercial. Our business district 4-story was where it was originally created.
And that was good results.
We softened it a
so we
little
just kind
bit.
of brought some of that language over. We actually made the language a little more flexible in this ordinance than what we currently have. And hopefully that language will, as we make changes to our other zoning districts, will probably be transitioned to those other districts. What we're trying to do is just give an applicant a lot of flexibility to use what measures they feel are best for their project in different locations. So there's any number of things that they could employ to try to do that.
Good. Okay. I have another question. Number 6, specifying that automobile-oriented uses, if part of the planned development, be contained within the development. Is that like the whole Grand Prix or Formula One races? They have to be. What are we
Well,
talking
like fuel
about there?
centers, drive-throughs, some of the uses that are generally permitted in the PCD, any use that's permitted in general commercial or regional commercial, for the most part, is allowed in PCD. So what we're trying to do is identify those uses that could visually compete with the objectives of the planned commercial development if they weren't integrated or placed in an optimal location within the project. So we're trying to, from the streetscape, to present the project with more of a situation where the buildings are more engaging the public realm, rather than you're looking at cars stacked in the drive-through lane or a large parking lot. Almost kind of like what we're trying to do with the town center district in a way. So that you're presenting it to the community, especially in the case of this property. It's kind of the western gateway into Farragut.
Right.
So what we didn't, I guess, want to see in talking with the Planning Commission was, maybe a retail car rental where you got a lot of cars parked out along Kingston Pike that could, maybe detract from the overall project. So we're trying to encourage them to place the buildings up closer to the street, and then orient those auto-oriented uses internal to the development.
Okay, I think I understand better. Thank you. I have no more questions.
Mark, where is it OSR, the language that, about the team of,
Yes, I think there's language in the open space residential that encourages a team of professionals.
It's not in here anywhere, is it?
No, it's not in this ordinance, no.
and I'm trying to find the specific language, and I can't speed read that well, because that is a concern of mine. I look at our land use plan, and this PCD with the residential in it ties very much into what we're trying to establish, which are activity hubs.
Yes.
And this vision works with that. We had a retrofitting suburbia symposium last week, and she let us know that we have a walk score of, from a 0 to 100, we have a walk score of 13, because people we have plenty of walking facilities, but there's no place to walk to that's immediate to them. So what I'm looking at, these PCDs and hopefully maybe someday mixed use residential, is having those activity hubs where people can get to it, where this isn't just serving the apartments that are on there, but the immediate residential around it, so they can get there, that this is going to be a place that people want to go to, that they'll want to load their kids up on their bikes and ride over to, not necessarily
Less than a
drive
quarter
to.
mile.
Yeah, not necessarily drive to. So when they came and we were looking at the plan, it's got good bones. There's a start there, but I think the assistance of an architect will make it a placemaking. It will make it a destination. And that is, if we're going to do PCDs, to me, that is what the purpose of those is, for not just the people that are living there, but to engage the residents around it, and maybe get our walk score up a little bit.
13.
So I would like to see some kind of language in there requiring that team, but they were struggling with, okay, can we have the setbacks relaxed a little bit? Do we need to include some language in there to provide some flexibility from the guidelines for the MPC? So we have our guidelines in there, and those are the ones that we want to stick to, but if they have a case to be made as to why we could relax those guidelines, then there's flexibility built into the PCD language for the Planning Commission to kind of work, because we all have that property has topographical issues. So I'm wondering if we need to build in a little bit more flexibility, leaving the guidelines in place, but having some flexibility to work around those guidelines, project-specific or context-specific, which is the word we tend to use. I'm not sure how the rest of
Yeah.
you feel about that.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a thought on that?
Well, first of all, I agree with the architectural landscape design being a part of this. I agree with that. I'm not sure about the second part, exactly what you would add to this to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, how do you do that? What are you proposing?
That's the tough part it's just an idea. We've gotten to a point where we were talking about it, we have these guidelines that we pulled from R6 OSMFR,
Yeah.
and they're good guidelines, and they work for R6 OSMFR. Do they work in are they always going to work in a PCD? Because PCD is a little different. I like that we have guidelines in there that to give us some guidance and give us some numbers, solid numbers as to what we're looking at. But wondering if we could have some flexibility so they're not coming to look for a variance, that we're looking at the project as a whole and say, okay, I can see where we could relax this setback because of what's next to it, whereas so we're not so stringent. To me, that's what a PCD is about, is finding that flexibility that you may not have in another zoning ordinance.
Yeah, each piece of property has a different topo, and it may be not necessarily this one, but some of the others may have other challenges that we don't really have a way to see until it gets presented to us or to the planning commission.
Well, part of the height language in R6 was, again, kind of almost, in a way, a form-based component, hybrid between a form and a Euclidean, because what we were trying to do was to scale structures that would be within 100 feet of a residential property where their structures are much smaller. Because in a planned commercial district, you could have huge buildings potentially, multifamily buildings that are very large. What we were trying to do is, if you're going to have buildings within 100 feet of residential property, that the scale of those buildings needs to start looking more like what they're transitioning to. So that was the point of the height restriction, saying that if you have buildings within 100 feet, that they would not exceed the maximum height permitted in that for principal dwelling units in that adjacent zoning district, so that you start looking like you're transitioning in form to what's around you.
But then if you have topographical features where the residential are 70 or 80 feet higher than the commercial down here, you could have a taller building and residential,
Yeah.
you're looking over the top of a tall
That's
building.
pretty-
So that's
Yeah.
hence the need
That's
for
the tough.
flexibility.
And that's
Yeah.
the problem we have right where we are right now
Yeah.
in this particular project. I could go either way with that. I understand your point, but I also look at the topographical, that when you're looking at that and you have such a dramatic difference between where the house is and where the other building is, and it gives you the same sense of height, the question is, do you want flexibility there? I could go either way. I
And
can
it's
see
not
both
really
sides
just
of this
the
argument.
height too. It's also just the footprint of the structures, so
Yeah.
that they start to emulate what's surrounding them. Like if this would happen on other pieces of property, you might have on the periphery of these kind of developments office buildings that are residential in appearance. Or you may have small apartment buildings that are starting to look in scale to what's abutting them, so that you have this kind of form transition. So it's not just about height, it's also about the scale of the structures as you're moving from one transect to another, one type of development into another type of development, if that makes sense.
I think we have someone in the audience that would like to address this.
I would. Daniel Smith, 810 Henley Street, Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm with the developer and the applicant, Kingston Pike Properties. I think our position is that this is a planned district by nature, and so the necessity for having these strict requirements in a district like this, where an applicant comes and seeks a rezoning based off of a concept plan, and that concept plan is vetted by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission has the discretion to look at that particular project and determine what makes sense in that specific project, that the need to have a strict height requirement, setback requirement, becomes kind of a moot point. This is not like a R6 zone where you designate a bunch of properties and it's R6, and any developer can come in, they can get a density and build whatever they can build under the code. This is a special kind of district that the Planning Commission is heavily involved in every aspect of it, from the density, from the scale, from for example, we were discussing where the open spaces needed to be, and that sort of involvement from the Planning Commission staff is in itself a protection that kind of alleviates the necessity to have a strict height requirement. So I think for this particular project, the context of it being on a hillside like it is, and at the bottom of a steep grade, the Planning Commission can take that into account and make the decision that makes sense for that piece of property. And so I think that, our position is, and what we sought at the Planning Commission, is to revisit this